Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I'm so grateful that you're here. This is the Daily Medicine Transmission. Can you believe it? August 25th, 2021. It is, we're looking at the last week or so of August. This is amazing and kind of disorienting for how quickly things are moving. So welcome back. Welcome if you're new to the channel. Thank you for being here. Don't forget to interact with this content in some way if you find it inspiring or helpful by subscribing, sharing, liking, and commenting on this content. I am live on YouTube, but if you're watching the recording on BitChute or Odysee, all of those things still apply. When you interact with the content, it actually does signal to the algorithm that it's worth spreading the content to a larger audience. So thank you for doing that in advance. And let's just get right into today's transmission. So kind of in a interesting headspace at the moment, just because I was very steeped in writing a piece about what is coming, right? There's so much speculation, and there are so many people that are either trying to straight up tell everybody what is coming, or utilizing their skill set or their natural abilities to read into the structures psychically, intuitively, energetically to know what is coming. And there's a lot of pieces that I've been kind of struggling to put together, and they're finally starting to coalesce. Of course, with Mercury in Virgo, right? The analysis and the discernment. And I will say that Mercury is about to be in a conjunction with my lunar north node, and Neptune being in conjunction with my south node. Remember that opposition yesterday with Mercury and Neptune. So the wheels are definitely turning, at least on my end. So I'm trying to take myself out of that headspace and get more into this headspace. So bear with me as we move through this process. But it does pull together a lot of different pieces that have finally starting to come together, right? When we talk about all of the woo-woo stuff when it comes to star seeds and DNA activation and galactic issues and connections and all of that stuff that we talk about a lot here, but also connecting it to some very tangible, very large cosmic cycles that are unfolding as we speak, that there is plenty of evidence to suggest what we're going into that is also intentionally suppressed, and there's a reason for that. And then of course the bloodlines, the connection to the bloodlines, specifically to the star seeds. And you know what's really important about what I'm putting together right now, I think, is that it actually provides some practical and pragmatic things that we can do in the meantime, because sometimes it does seem so big that we're wondering how can I, as just this one person in my life, actually make an impact? Well, if you remember the new moon cycle that we are still currently in, right? We just had the full moon. That means we have this whole lunar cycle still, the whole second half to go through, is about this ideal nature of togetherness, and the idea that when each person steps into the fullness of who they are and their creativity and expression moving freely through them, that is when we are able to come together and really make a difference on a collective level. But it does require that each of us are doing the work. And that was yesterday's transmission. The real work is really starting now. The sun is in Virgo. Virgo season is the time where it seems like things aren't happening, but in fact, lots of processes are happening underneath the surface. Virgo time of the year, in terms of a seasonal growing cycle, is when the plant diverts all of its resources to the growing of the fruit, right? The hormonal structure and focus changes, right? Just like in any type of pregnancy. The hormonal structure of the plant changes. It diverts its resources to the growing of the fruit, as opposed to photosynthesis and the growing of the leaves and the stems, and of course the flower. All of that process has already happened, and now when we're in Virgo time, it does require patience, because it seems like nothing's happening until it's harvest time. So this is the real work, and it really puts it's where the rubber meets the road, right? When we are at the point where we are soon going to cultivate everything that we have, or reap everything we have sown and cultivated. And as we're going to see in today's transmission, this is very much on many of our minds right now. But be where you are, and please absolutely take a rest. The image for this transmission today comes directly from a trail system that's very close to my house, like a rails to trail pathway. And that is something that people put up on their property right next to the pathway, which was really nice. Like, just take a break. And you see how there are two spots there. There are two seats for two people to sit down and just take a rest, to just be with each other, right? To be in the company of our own humanity with each other. This is so important. It cannot be overstated. I know that it's frustrating and we don't understand the people that are seemingly opposite to us. So maybe it's time that we sit congruent with them, sit next to them, be in space with them, be in a holy and sacred space with them, so that we can all come together and create beautiful music together. That's what this whole lunar cycle is really setting us up for. So let's get right into the reading. Oh, one thing I wanted to mention, and I mentioned yesterday, but I'm going to officially put it out there on all of my platforms. If you're on my mailing list, you'll get an email about it. Also, if you're not on my mailing list and you want to get updated on when I'm making these types of offerings, or if there's any changes or shifts to my practice, you can go to my website. It's linked in the description box below, and then you can, there's a flash page that comes right up on the home page. You can just put in an email address, and then you will get emails from me. So I am offering a flash sale. I do these lunar transit readings that just look at the lunar cycle in regards to your chart and what stands out the most. So I'm doing it at a discount and till the end of August, right? Actually, I'm going to do it up until the 6th of September, which is our next new moon. So if you book between now and the 6th of September, the lunar transit reading is going to only be $44. And I think that's a pretty darn good value considering how deep we go into it and look at how these lunar transits, and especially this, all of the transits, not just the lunar transit, but the entire cycle, how it's impacting you on a personal level in your chart, if there's any starseed markings that are being impacted directly, and we just unpack that. So $44 for that reading. And like I said, I'm going to put it all up on the platforms today so that I can get a reach. But just so you know, anytime between now, which is the 25th, up till September 6th, I'm going to be offering that lunar transit reading for a discount at $44. So anyway, let's get right into it. Let's see what messages we have in store, what transmission has come through for all of us today, including me, which is why I love this work so much. So we're going to bring this up, and we are going to, as usual, I will one day find a smooth transition to all of this, of course. But in the meantime, we're going to just work with what we have here. So here we go. I'm just going to bring myself here. So as we're looking at this reading, talk about a respite and taking a rest. We have our Four of Swords here as our causal factor. So this reading that we're seeing here, and the transmission that really came through, I mean, it was pretty clear. It comes through in very concise messages for me. It doesn't really come in through these very long, except when I'm writing. When I'm writing, it's a different story entirely. And the channeling is very deep when I'm writing, and it tends to have a lot of information, just like a zip file that needs to be unpacked and, what's the word? It needs to be unzipped, essentially. But in terms of just strictly intuitive, if it's not just symbolic and imagery, it does just come in very short phrases. And it was very much just be where you are, right? Be where you are, bloom where you're planted, just be in the moment. And when we look at the Four of Swords, it does say truce, but the word that really comes out is respite. So keep in mind that as we are looking at this entire reading today, that this part of it is an essential piece in terms of the rest of it, right? If we want to get to the other side of this, where the Princess of Wands, as we see here, right? Passion, enthusiasm, joy, right? The Princess of the Shining Flame, she's very playful. She's riding the wave of the fire. She is she's beautiful and courageous and passionate, and also can be, you know, kind of immature about it. But we're going to focus here on all of the, I would say, all of the light aspects, the positive aspects of this card, just for the sake of what we're looking at here. But it does require, to a certain extent, that we are already in this place where we have allowed our minds to come to a sense of balance and a chance to reflect. So the Four of Swords, right? Jupiter in Libra. Jupiter does a great job at balancing the scales. And all of these energies, right? The swords coming into the middle here. And there's a lot of chaos around this, right? You can see all these geometric patterns that are just kind of chaotic and woven in this way that doesn't really seem to be very balanced. But in the middle, and even in the space where the swords are residing, it's green, right? You got that heart chakra energy that is associated with it, with the green color. Remember, green is, you know, the color of chlorophyll, right? This is why plants are so. There are other pigments that also aid in photosynthesis. It's not just green, but it is the primary frequency of photosynthesis. And so there is, which is interesting. Oh my God, I can't even get into the physics of light, right, and the chemistry of light right this second. But what I want to point out here is how there is a balance, right? That there is a sense of things being balanced and a solution, really. So when you think about truce, it's kind of this idea that, like, we've all come to an agreement or some sort of compromise, but it's really, the Four always is this moment of structural support, but it also does give us an opportunity to have chance to reflect in a mental way, right? And so we may have found a solution to something, we may have solved a problem that gives us this mental structure and balance just for the moment, because we always know that what comes after the Four is the Five, and the Five is really the bottom, right? You can't get any lower than the Five in terms of this numerological bell curve, right? So we know that it's a momentary respite, but still it's important. And maybe a mental process has been completed. So however that we are looking at this, we are seeing here that coming into the moment, and remember we talked about this yesterday with Venus, right? Venus in Libra, in her rulership of Libra, in this moment yesterday of poise and self-control and being able to look at some sort of really dramatic confrontation from a perspective of a calm mind and really starting to make sense of it. And so if we really embrace that yesterday and coming into today, this is our truce. And it's not so much a truce, and it can be a truce with others, right? Where we're so frustrated collectively, right, as we're split apart, and we're frustrated with those who appear to be in the opposite camp of us, whatever that is. It really doesn't matter at this point, because we're all making the decisions to do what we're going to do based on where we each are individually and what we have agreed to at a higher soul level to experience. And so this is why it's so important that we are not getting caught up of what other people are doing and what's happening outside of us. And certainly we want to hold people accountable, but the best way to hold people accountable is just stand in truth, right? Truth is all that you need, and truth is the light, right? And so when we get really caught up, and this is how we get pulled back into our own shadow. We get really caught up in trying to impose our viewpoint, our version of reality, what we think people should do, even when they're doing things that are, in fact, damaging and horrific and things that we cannot abide by. It's difficult, and I'm not trying to understate how that is, but we do have to find this balance in our own mind. And so we come to a truce within ourselves. We come to a truce with those in our life that are doing things that we don't agree with. We come to some sort of respite and a chance to reflect mentally in where we are now. And this is we have to get to this point first for the rest of this reading to really unfold as it is in front of us. And there's plenty of ways here. You can even see the Roadrunner here telling, reminding us to find the humor in everything and to not take things too seriously, that we have to find joy, just like the Princess of Wands. She's not taking anything seriously, right? She is just riding the wave of creation and expression and is in total innocence to it. And we see the whale, the humpback whale, so we know that resonance and vibration, and this is a big part of the piece that I'm writing right now, is how important all of that really is. It really is the most important thing. But coming into the moment here, we're finding ourselves in this moment of mental respite, a chance to reflect, some balance in all of these aspects that are coming in from different angles, meeting in the middle, even though we are surrounded by chaos. So we have this moment of respite coming in to the heart of the matter, which is, here's our Six of Cups again. We've seen this a lot, and I think this is very interesting. Pleasure. It's kind of hard to wrap your head around feeling pleasure right now. The sun in Scorpio, right? The pleasure. But remember what the 6 is. It's the reconciliation of opposites. It is the 60-degree angle of the sextile. It requires that we actually invest what we've learned from our time beforehand in the 5 to come to some sort of balance or harmony. And when we're talking about Scorpio, and the cups, we're talking about our emotions, we're talking about the spirit, we're talking about feeling. So deep emotions having passed through the depth of pain and fear, balance and harmony through the return to the inner source. That's a big part of the Scorpio archetype. And it reconciles the opposite. And so we get an opportunity to feel the pleasure of going through that process and learning something, coming out of it, coming out of the depth of that pain and disappointment that the 5 of Cups represents. And so this is at the heart of the matter. And we see here that beforehand, coming into the moment, we've given ourselves the opportunity to take a break mentally, right? To not just keep rehashing it and just like, blah, 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 blah. And this is difficult, right? This is very difficult with Mercury in Virgo right now because it's crunching the numbers, analyzing. But we cannot forget the feminine, earth-based quality of Virgo, which is about intuition, right? And so it's not all up in here. It's a higher and more intuitive mental process as well. And we don't really have the opportunity to get to that until we do kind of calm the chatter, find some sort of balance, a chance to reflect rather than continue to take in more data, right? Going on social media, finding more information, more, right? Consuming data, right? And that's an important part of the process. But now that Mercury's in Virgo, we are analyzing the data, right? We're not taking in more, we're analyzing it. That's a very specific part of a scientific study, is analyzing your data and seeing what actually spits out the other side. But we can't really do that until we give ourselves a chance to reflect on everything that's come in so far. But at the heart here, there's such a beautiful opportunity to find this reconciliation of what is opposite. And just like I said, sitting down with that other person, even if it's that other person within you, right? Your shadow side, sitting down with those who represent the opposite of where you are and being able to reconcile that, and how beautiful and how lovely that really feels. I mean, pleasure, the thing about Scorpio is that it's got such this dark tone to it, and it is. But there's also something so powerful about when we come together, that we are in fact more powerful together than each of us are separately. And this 6 of Cups is this moment where we get to reconcile the opposition, where we get to come out of the depth of that disappointment and pain and really sit in the light aspect of what we are capable of creating together, right? In our communion, in our cooperation, in our communal focus, right? So it's not all doom and gloom with Scorpio. There is a moment here where we really get to feel into this balance and harmony, okay? But it does come to a certain extent, we want to embrace this truce, whatever this is, and accept all of these different directions that information is coming from to a center point. And it actually does kind of feed in, I didn't even think about it till just now, feed into this piece that I'm writing, all of these different factors that seemed separate now starting to come together and making a little bit more sense in a larger context. So and speaking of people and feeling, we have our Eight of Roses, the spiritual community, the Sangha. It's time, right? And so what is this? This is what we don't really know consciously yet. This is what's running in the background, our subconscious, and where we draw our personal power from, where we're able to really feel rooted and secure. It's in our relationships, in our community. Now, this can be, like I said, our spiritual community, a community of like-minded people that support each other. If you notice in this card, there are a lot of different there's a lot of different imagery here. There's certainly different people represented, but there's also different spiritual and religious imagery here. You know, we got you got if you look really closely, you can see the Freemason symbol of the compass and square on this candle. So take that for, what it is. It's still something that exists, and there are lots of people who ascribe to this this way of practicing and this particular community, right? Freemasonry is very popular all over the world. You can go to the smallest podunk town you can think of, and you will find a Masonic lodge. So anyway, I'm not advocating for it specifically. I'm just pointing out observations, facts, right? So you can have your feelings about it all you want, but that doesn't really take away from the fact that large cross sections of the population are invested in this particular way of looking at the world. So, and that's really hard, right? That's really difficult to accept. Those who, seem to attach themselves and to have a spiritual or religious focus that is in complete disharmony with ours. So, I mean, we're really going to be challenged. I mean, this is not going away, and this type of energy is just going to keep challenging us over and over and over. So anyway, what this is saying, though, is that where we root ourselves, where we find ourselves supported and balanced, is in our community of like-minded people who support us, our spiritual family, our actual family. This is a very Cancerian energy. Remember yesterday, the Chariot being reversed, right? The walls are starting to come down. The armor is starting to dissolve, right? We have to let some of this go. So if we root ourselves in these bonds of love and acceptance and community, right? It's time to rejoin this community, even if it's the largest context of humanity, right? Because we have really been at odds with each other. And the bifurcation, as difficult as it is really here to teach us how to transcend that, right? But we don't transcend it without it actually happening. So, new friends could be coming in, old relationships could be reawakened, past life relationships could wake up. There's a lot of different ways this can go, but this is showing us that if we can root ourselves into the community, right, the human family, despite all of the differences, this is where we really draw our power from, and our spirit, right? And the sacredness of these relationships is really important. And as we're going to see, that this will root us in a way that allows us to maybe step onto unknown pathways. And we'll get to that. Now, where we're seemingly paying attention, and really where our conscious awareness is, where we can release our energy, as just kind of like the crown chakra or the top of the chart, right? The midheaven or the zenith is in the harvest, right? This is the Four of Forces. It's reversed. So we're looking at autumn, and it is a cycle of harvest that we are seeing here, and it's time to gather up the results of our action. Virgo time is preparing for the harvest, right? It is everything coming to fruition that has been, like I said, sown and cultivated over this growing cycle. And now we see that final action needs to be taken to reap what we have sown, right? We do have to put some energy into this. In order to gather up the results of our action. There may be some loose ends to tie up. There may be, things that need to be done. We have to actually put some work into the harvest. Anybody who's ever worked on a farm in any capacity knows that this is probably the most work intensive time of the year, other than spring, when you're preparing the ground for growth. Harvest time is very busy. It's very work intensive, and it's necessary, right? If you just let it all go, you don't actually get to reap whatever it is you have sown and cultivated. So this is not only where I think our conscious awareness is right now, but it's also where we can make the most contribution by focusing on here. And so regardless of what is cultivated in what we do harvest, regardless of it, it's really important that we live in appreciation for whatever it is, because we learn something. If it's not a great harvest, or there's mold, or there's some other problem with what's going on, it's important that we still seat ourselves in gratitude, because if it's not exactly what we wanted, then there are things we can go back to and be like, okay, I see this and this and this. So we learn something for the next cycle. We live in appreciation for just the opportunity to even have this, and to realize that we may not like or enjoy or be very comfortable with this harvest, whatever it is, but it is part of the cycle that cannot be stopped. Okay. And so living in appreciation and gratitude for it is a really, is probably the highest way that we can express our gratitude, of course, and to really learn something, right? And to acknowledge that everything is in fact sacred and sanctified. And so we are rooted, and we really draw our power from the spiritual community that we're part of, like-minded people, the people that support us, and the people we support, right? We create this framework, we create this container of love and these bonds that really hold us, and we're able to really sit in our hearts and feel the reconciliation of the opposites. And then from here, we can use that energy to actually put the work into the harvest, right? I mean, we can sit here and be like, I don't like what's coming. I don't like what's harvested. And we can go around and blame everybody else for it. But at the end of the day, we're all responsible for ourselves. So the best thing I think we can do in this moment is to harvest what we've learned from everything so far, to appreciate everything, because it is taking us exactly where we want to go, even if it doesn't seem like it at first. I mean, this is not going to be an easy process, just like the harvest time is very work intensive. I mean, it's the most stressful time of year, I would say, in any kind of farming situation. Every harvest I've ever worked, especially in commercial cannabis, harvest is by far one of the most stressful times. You know what I mean? Because that's where the rubber meets the road, right? You get to see exactly what has come about with all of your efforts. And so focusing here, I think, is really a great way to express our contribution, right? You know, the release of our power in this direction. And then where we find, you know, the impact, the effect, what to expect from all of this coming together is this insatiable hunger for life, right? This beautiful, passionate, joyful, enthusiastic energy that we can hold within ourselves, right? The court cards, they are us, they represent who we are, actual people. You know, this may be people in your life. This may be you. I would really say that everything that we are looking at is leading us to have this, you know, the princess of the shining flame, right? Insatiable hunger for life. She has no worries, and she is just riding the flame, right? She's got this tiger that is like intimately wrapped around her, and she has these very large antennae. So there's also this sense of like reaching out with the very essence of who we are, and like really just taking up space, right? And there's flames off of this pedestal, right? I get a Vesta vibe really strongly from this. We have the sunflower, or a solar disc on the end of the wand here. This is just an incredibly powerful, enthusiastic, and joyful type of energy that we can hold within us. It's very playful, right? It's very positive. It's very passionate. It's very full of anima, right? Anima versus animus in Jungian terms, right? It's very lustful. If you think of the lust card in the Crowley deck, the Thoth Tarot, it is the woman underneath, right? Riding the multi-headed beast, pushing that seed point up through the bottom, right? Through the surface of the soil. And this represents that within us, like us embodying that energy and how we can respond to it, how it is likely to be expressed within us, which is, I think that this is a really good thing to be able to embody right now, is some joy, some enthusiasm, right? But it doesn't come without this ability to find some sort of respite, give our mind a chance to relax and reflect, and to really feel into the balance and the harmony that comes from coming out of the separation, and reconcile on a very deep emotional level, and see what we're capable of when we are actually together, and we can put aside our differences and actually use them as a means of creation. And then we each get to step into this very playful and enthusiastic part of ourselves. And Venus, Venus in the fire signs, that's what the Princess of Wands represents. And, she is, she's just, very playful, very innocent, very joyful. And I think we really do need a dose of this. And we talked about this yesterday, right? With the Five of Roses, the children in the garden, right? Again, there's a lot here in the last 2 days, especially, where we can really root ourselves into spirit, into love, into unconditional love, into feeling and the connection between us. It's, and the earth, And Venus, of course, is the great mother incarnate, right? Represents fertility. And before we get to that point, we have to feel some measure of lust. And, that's a loaded term. So, take it for what it means in terms of this passion, right? That Leo energy, the passion to creatively express ourselves. So there's some guidance here, as usual, along this pathway to help us, because this is not easy. I'm not suggesting in any way that any of this is easy. This is very difficult, but this is the transmission, and it's guiding us to how we can most successfully navigate these times when there are so many different ways that we can look at things negatively, where we can not come to a balance within ourselves, not find some sort of mental respite, and keep fighting each other, not finding that space in between that we overlap. That is really, really important to acknowledge. So when it comes to the Eight of Roses, we also have the Eight of Scrolls. And remember, Archangel Raphael from yesterday, also number 8, right? This infinity, the divine intervention that leads to the infinite self, the Christ consciousness, right? In Gnosticism, the 888 is the Christ consciousness. So not only do we have ourselves rooted here in this spiritual community, this community of love and like-minded individuals really supporting each other, we also have the Eight of Scrolls. So when we have ourselves rooted here, this goes 2 ways. Number one, when we are rooted in this very strong kind of community, the spiritual community, it gives us the courage and the ability to investigate maybe unknown paths, right? The paths unknown. You can see here that there are 3 paths. One's very well lit and conditioned, right? Something that this person is familiar with. The squirrel is the sitting there at the head of this path. The other one that she's actually considering is the darker one. It's kind of overgrown a little bit, and there's a raccoon that's in front of it. And then there's one behind her that she doesn't even see with the fox, right? And it's really overgrown, and there's no sun shining on it. And she's got her little satchel of all of her scrolls, right? So all of her ideas are sitting there, and she's really contemplating. It does seem, again, like with the Four of Swords here, the respite is this moment here where we take a chance to reflect and maybe go down a pathway we haven't gone before. So if you stay with the safe path, you won't catch the unseen opportunities. Perhaps this means that it's time to reach out and make connections to those that you have kept at arm's length or considered your enemy, or is responsible for why you feel the way you do, which is not true, because we're all responsible for our own feelings, but we like to externalize it and play the victim. So if we find ourselves rooted in these very strong bonds in community, then we are going to be able to take the unseen path, the unknown path, and maybe learn something new. Take ourselves somewhere that we could have never imagined how great it would be, right? You know what's on this other path. We've done it billions of times, right? Maybe it's time to take a different pathway because it's going to lead to something so much better and we would have never known. The other way that goes, and this goes both ways, if we are willing to not be attached to our agenda, but to really consider the unknown path, and believe me, it's all unknown, isn't it? It's all unknown. We're in new territory right now. And so if we can at least acknowledge that and be willing to go down a new pathway, perhaps that'll lead us to a place where our bonds are strengthened, that we feel more like we are part of the human community. That's another way that these two eights are interacting with each other. And remember, the scrolls are the mind, right? So give yourself, again, the opportunity to reflect, to not be attached to your agenda necessarily, to find some respite so you can actually consider like, maybe I'll take this other pathway. And your spiritual bonds, your familial bonds, all of the beautiful bonds of a community like this will really hold us as our minds and our consciousness perhaps goes down a new pathway. And this new pathway might lead you to stronger bonds as well. So it goes both ways. And I would say with the Roadrunner, it says, keep your sense of humor and don't take things so seriously. I know that's very difficult right now because we are facing like some of the most challenging things that we are ever going to face in our life. We're going to have to make some very serious decisions. And that doesn't seem very humorous at all. But this is, we have to keep it light, right? The Princess of Wands, right? She's not taking anything seriously. She's not. She is playing. She is riding the wave of joy. And the best thing that we can do in order to take that unknown path is to keep our sense of humor. If we want to ride this wave of joy, then we have to actually embody that within us first. And that may be an unknown path. That may be something we're completely unfamiliar with. But at the same time, we'll never get to the end of, a pathway that takes us to our joy if we don't like relax a little bit and find the humor in things, like lighten up, honestly. And lighten up enough to be able to interface with other human beings, even if they've done something that you are vehemently against. I'm not saying that you should forgive people for abusive behavior. That's a personal journey, forgiving and stuff like that. And I'm not saying that people shouldn't be held accountable. But again, when you stand in your truth and you stand in truth, right? Truth is light. They are held accountable because all of their transgressions are brought right to light. So hold on one second. I'm going to take a sip of my beverage here. Okay, thank you for humoring me in that end. So we also, when it comes to where we are putting our attention, okay, music. The humpback whale. Now, when I was at the Delaware beaches in the summertime, there are quite it's not uncommon to see pods of dolphins off the coastline. So they were very active. They were very close by. They were communicating quite a bit energetically, at least to me. And all of these creatures, all of the water mammals that communicate through sound underwater, this is representing how important that vibration is. And so the first thing that you're going to do, that, you know, when you go to a shaman, for instance, in order to address some sort of healing issue, the first thing they're going to ask you is, when did you stop singing, right? And you know, this is our natural ability to harness vibration, is through our voice, right? This is why it's so important that we don't stop singing, that we continue to express ourselves, and that we are responsible for the resonance that we put out into the world as well. So music is essential to your healing and well-being. So however you're singing, listening to music, binaural beats, sound healing, whatever it is that works for you, it's important that that we are engaging in this. Something else that is interesting is that whales, they migrate, right? And just like birds, they migrate, and they migrate because they have organs in their body that respond to the magnetic field of the earth that allow them to navigate. And so, you know, when you wonder, how do these animals know? How do these animals know where to go? How do they know when to go? And it's because they have an organ that allows them to interface and to feel the electromagnetic field of the earth, right? The Schumann resonance. And so that's something else to consider too, that it goes both ways. And we can't lose this part of ourselves as we are going through this harvest period, right? It's really easy to lose sight of our song and to drop this away as we are facing a difficult harvest, perhaps, right? Even though this is where our power is being released, and this is where the appreciation can come in, is through our song, through our voice, and also too, to navigate is also to plug into the electromagnetic field, the magnetic field of the planet. And we talked about this a lot, and we just talked about it yesterday, and it keeps coming back up, right? To plug into the earth, to allow Gaia as a living entity, and as her toroidal field, as her Merkaba is able to guide these other animals and beings on their pathway, allow it to guide you as well. And this goes along really well with the adsum, right? I am here. We are always being attended to. We are surrounded by a myriad of energies and frequencies and non-physical entities, our guides, our ancestors, however you conceptualize it. We're never alone, and it's just a matter of realizing it and coming to awareness. And this, again, goes along with the magnetics, the frequency that goes along with the magnetic field of the planet. She is, just like she guides all of these animals on their migration, it is also, we are being guided and supported energetically through our own process. And in this case, it's a process of harvest, right? Where we are getting down to the wire here, where everything is about to come to culmination and be harvested. So we're always attended to, right? And it's just a matter of becoming aware of it. And just like these animals, they know where they're going. They're guided on their journey of migration because they are able to pick up on the oscillation, the vibration of the magnetic field of the planet. And we can do that too. And it comes through our ability to not only receive, but also to express, to sing. And I had a dream not that long ago where, there are people who truly believe that they are doing what's best for the survival of humanity. And there are people that are pushing the AI transhumanist agenda because they really do believe that that is how humanity is the only way we're going to survive. And this is going to be part of the piece that I'm writing, because there are very specific things related to the magnetic field, related to the sun and our solar system and the galactic magnetics as well, that are going to impact what life is like on this planet. And there are people who I think really do believe that they're doing the right thing by implementing and introducing some measure of artificial life in order to go through this process and survive, okay? And that's neither here nor there, but in this conversation at least. But in the dream that I had, what really threw them for a loop, all these little Agent Smiths that are scrambling to survive in this matrix, are or trying to control it or just leave it entirely, was this introduction of this Syrian nature where we're all just like singing, and our vibration from our own self is which actually supports and protects us. And that has been making itself really known to me. So that's something else I want to bring up as well, that we have it all within us and it's surrounding us at every moment. And we have plenty of examples of the animals in our surrounding us that utilize the same type of natural technology in order to find their own way. And this is going to assist us so much if we can really harness it and be aware of it, okay? Because the harvest is coming, right? And sometimes these cycles are bigger than any one person is actually responsible for, as much as there are particular areas of social and cultural awareness that would want us to think that we are a blight on the earth. And granted, there are a lot of, we do need to respect our planet as, a mother, right? And that's not to say that we are doing the best that we could at that. But at the same time, like I said yesterday, when I had that Reiki attunement, what I came to have a direct connection with is that a mother loves unconditionally and will provide no matter what, even and forgives, loves unconditionally and forgives, even those who are not loving themselves unconditionally. She will still do so, and she will guide us through this process, right? But it will require that we also embody and cultivate within us our own expression and our own connection to vibration through our voice, through our song, right? So I know that's a really long explanation, but it really felt important to come through and explain all of that. So let's look at the astrology for today, now that we've gotten really esoteric and intuitive. Now we can bring it back to some actual cycles. So our moon is still in Aries today, okay? So there's some interesting things that are going to happen as we go through today. Checking in with the chat real quick. Okay, everything is streaming. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So first of all, let's we will take a look back in the, we'll go back in time here as we usually do. But you're going to see here that the moon, of course, is going to be Chiron today. So talk about triggers. Also, Venus and Chiron are soon to be in opposition with each other. That's going to happen late tonight, early tomorrow morning. And along with Mercury is going to be in a trine also with Pluto. So those are things that we'll talk about more directly tomorrow. But in the meantime, let's look at what's going on for today. Because what we're going to see here is we're being supported in this ability to kind of exist in two places at once. And as the day progresses and we get closer to this moon in Chiron, if we get closer, or not in Chiron, this moon conjunct Chiron, as we get closer to opposition to Venus, opposition to Vesta, also in Libra, we're going to see that it's going to be really important that we really harness what it is that it feels like to exist in two places at once successfully. Because as we go through the day and the moon starts to find a lot of tension once it passes Chiron, it's going to be important that we can reflect back onto that. Because remember, Aries is cardinal fire. It is the electrical current, right? And because it's the movement of energy, fire, right, is the movement. And what is electrical current other than the opposite charge finding each other and that energy, being released along the way? It's just electrons moving, right? If you even believe that electrons are doing what classical physics says. Tesla would have something else to say about that. But for the sake of this conversation, we're just going to understand that in terms of electrical charge. Opposite electrical charge is what allows for electrical current in the first place, right? So let's go back here. Let's look at this as we understand how astrology can assist us in this whole process, right? So our moon is in Aries. We are looking at very early this morning, late last night, and we see right here. So the moon is in a sextile to Rahu, or the North Node. That means it's in a trine to Ketu, or the moon, her own South Node. We are talking about the moon. So not only is it making these connections to the nodal axis, it's her own nodal axis. And so within us, right, our feelings, our emotional landscape, our ability to adapt, right, how we feel on the inside is the moon, making this connection with our own soul's karmic journey, where we're going and where we've been. And so this connection here, first of all, is where we are able to, if we can exist simultaneously in two places at once, because the seed point of Aries encapsulates that there is two poles within each of us, right? We all hold the duality within us. Yeah, the yin and the yang, the masculine, the feminine, the black and the white, right? We hold that potential within us. The seed holds that potential within it. So we feel this potential, and we feel we have this opportunity. We did have this opportunity to be successfully in two places at once, right? Oh, and let me bring up here the actual document. Look at my notes. Okay, there we go. Okay. All right, guys, thank you. So succeeding in expressing ourselves, that is the important thing to remember with the moon, expressing ourselves simultaneously in two realms. Can we simultaneously within ourselves, how we feel on the inside, our emotional landscape, can we have unconditional love for ourselves and other at the same time? Can we do that? And the sextile, right, as we talk about sextiles, the 60-degree angle, where we talked about where Rahu is yesterday, right? The bucket and the well. The idea that there's a fundamental cooperation and trust in the natural world, but we have to put a little bit of effort, again, with the harvest, right? We have to put some effort into it. We have to build the well that holds the water. We have to take the bucket, put it down in the well, bring it back out. But that does signal that we actually trust that what we need, our feelings, a spirit, all of the things that the water represents will be there for us because it's naturally provided as a result of just being, right? So, in the beginning, it was just water, right? And so if we can invest this energy, right, into these two places, right? Rahu is our soul's karmic trajectory. It's our destiny, where we're being pulled in order to evolve at a soul level, which again is about this fundamental trust and cooperation in the natural world, that what we need spiritually will be provided for us by nature. And it's just a matter of us actually going and doing it. And so, but we have to be able to exist in these two places at once. And so again, showing unconditional love for ourselves, showing unconditional love for other, by simultaneously trusting that we will be provided, but at the very same time, also going out and harvesting what it is that is there for us. We have to be able to simultaneously exist in both places at once. And if we can do that, then we really can invest that into where our soul is being pulled on this karmic journey, which is in fact to, again, have this fundamental trust and cooperation at the same time. It's not trust the plan and I'm going to sit back and do nothing. It's trust that we will be provided with everything that we need, and also take the initiative to actually go out and harvest it, put the work in. But we have to be able to feel that within ourselves, that the potential for that is within us. And if we can do that, then the aspect of that, how we feel on the inside, our intuitive knowing, we can invest that into where our soul is being pulled. Now, the trine to Ketu, of course, is very is very foundationally supported. It doesn't need any input from us to support each other, this fire trine, but it also doesn't give us an opportunity to reconcile anything. It doesn't give us an opportunity to actually participate. It's just going to be something knocking at our hearts that is about the collective paradigm. And this is where we're walking away from. This is where we've been. We've already been in this place of the collective paradigm and the friction of the alchemical fire. And it's not to say that we won't be back here. It's just that this is where we've been. We've mastered this energy on a soul level already. And now it's time to move towards the opposite, which is Gemini. So we're waiting for something with this trine, right? We don't have to do anything, but at the same time, we're waiting for something else to come and stir us, isn't it? Right? And what we want is to take some action, right? And that seems counterintuitive, right? To, take a rest, find some respite in your mind. But the action is the existing in two places at once, where we fundamentally trust enough to give ourselves the respite, but at the same time, we cooperate with what is given to us and actually act on that and act on it as if it already exists, okay? That is how manifestation actually happens, not being like, I want this to happen and I wish it happened, and thinking about how much you don't have it, which is just reinforcing that you don't have it. You have to embody the resonance as if it already exists if you want to attract it to you. So that's where these things are starting. So we move forward in that the moon then comes into an opposition. Or no, it comes into another sextile with Saturn retrograde. Look at that. Saturn retrograde in Aquarius, right? The seer becomes the doer, right? We've been kind of like sitting back with Saturn, really feeling the responsibility and the almost the heaviness, but also the form and backbone of really seeing people for who they are rather than projecting onto them, finding our inspiration in these quiet moments. And now Saturn has retrograded back to a point where we have to actually take that vision and put it into action within ourselves, and feeling the responsibility of that, feeling that there are definitive walls and boundaries around that within us. And this sextile from the Aries moon in this moment is, if we can focus our attention, if we can concentrate on the big picture, right? If we can look into the crystal ball, right? This is how psychics work. And really all of us are psychic at this point. This is just going to keep coming online more and more. And then, being a professional psychic won't even really be relevant for, once everybody is able to actually harness their own intuitive nature. But if we can see the big picture, right, the full organic picture, and concentrate on that, and see everything for what it is, and be able to extrapolate from there. If we can do that, if we can focus on not the constituent parts, but the whole thing with our attention, if we can stay focused on that, again, we can invest that into what Saturn is really setting up for us, which is the seer becomes the doer, right? We see within us the moon, right? Our ability to intuit and our inner landscape. We see and we focus our attention on the big picture, and then we apply that to actually putting it into some sort of action, right? The seer becomes the doer. This is really potent, and is something to keep in mind as we go through today, because we're going to want to reflect back on this as the day progresses and starts to get more challenging. Because the moon is going to come into a trine then with asteroid Juno, which is in conjunction with Antares. We talked about this yesterday, and realizing that we can give new symbolic images to what Juno is representing, which is mostly the sting of the scorpion, right? The fact that we feel betrayed in a lot of ways, and we can't reconcile how, we give our trust to this situation, we give our power over to a collective situation. This is the sting of the scorpion. You have to see the truth for what it is and the feelings that are involved in it. And Juno is very predisposed to revenge, because She wants those scales to be balanced. And we can look at that situation within us, right, and see that as a symbolic representation of something else. And when we can do that, this trine, it's actually going to be very easy to do this because it's a trine, it's a fire trine. So there's not going to be, we don't have to really invest ourselves necessarily. We don't have to feel any friction or tension. It's just going to be very supportive. So just feel into that. Literally, because we're talking about the moon, feel into that potential here, that what you see as a sting is really, you have the choice to see that in a different context and see it as a learning opportunity and as a representation of something else within us, and not get caught up in the sting of the scorpion and Antares, okay? And again, like I said, now it's going to start getting challenging. So we haven't even gotten to present moment. So this is all happening hours ago. So now we're getting into the territory in this moment where it's going to start getting real challenging. So the moon then comes into an opposition with Venus. So we're starting to feel into like this really, how do I say this? It's like, it's the bifurcation or the polarization that happens when we put our ideal sense of cosmic order up against the social order, right? We have this image that we are focused on of like, this is what it means to have cosmic order. And that forces a bifurcation, because then it bumps up against human order, social order, a human-made law and order, right? And those two things don't always fit together. That's the ideal, right? And so, but that is an ideal, right? As opposed to what actually is. And so the moon at this position in an opposition to Venus in Libra, which represents the form of balance, but in the actual social order, right? Because you are now balanced with other. It's not an internalized balance that you get with Aries because it's all encapsulated within you. It is the form of social order in balance. And Venus being here, she's very powerful. This is her territory. This opposition, right? This opposition where we are going to really struggle, I feel like, with this, because Venus at this position is showing us that it's really necessary to go into the depth and extract. It's like going into a coal mine and pulling it out, right? We can't stay down in the coal mine forever. But somebody has to go down there and extract knowledge. They have to extract the deeper knowledge, but we have to also bring it back up for use, right? So that we get the benefit of the energy and the resources that we went down and extracted in the first place. But it's important that we recognize that there is still a balance even to that, right? We need to carry on at deeper levels for the quest for knowledge, which is what keeps the fires burning, right? That Vesta fire. But the need for there's a need for it, right? We need to have people that are dedicated to to digging, right? But we also have to come up from it. And this goes back to what I talked about at the very beginning, that we can keep digging and digging and digging and digging and digging, but we eventually have to come out of it and actually apply it and lead a more natural life. So the extraction is really what Venus is representing, right? And so this is an actual palpable reality with Venus, right? It's our resources and what we value and our relationships, our very palpable material world and what she represents and the balance of it. Whereas where we're feeling here is we're like, oh, well, I see that this is cosmic order here. But what that's doing is causing a bifurcation within myself, because I'm seeing what the social order is and the opposition, the tension, right? We have to find our fulcrum here. We don't want to get caught just going deeper into the mine and not extracting at all. But we also don't want to discount our feelings in that moment of just like the bifurcation within us, right? Because what's happening is that there are so many people digging and digging, and this has been happening for a while now, digging and digging and extracting information and extracting knowledge and extracting truth, and it's necessary. And it's happening, like I said, in our relationships, in our resources, in the palpable material reality, in the form of the relationships, the social relationships. But what it does not allow for, and this is why this moon opposition here in Aries is so important, it doesn't allow for us to just feel into the separation within ourselves. And this, again, goes back to that connection to the nodal axis, where we acknowledge that we have to acknowledge that simultaneously that we trust what is being provided, but we also have to actually extract it, right? But at the same time, we need to also be able to live within that bifurcation successfully within ourselves. And so this opposition is really going to bring it right up to the surface, and how we feel, right? And Venus being the feminine incarnate, right? The actual material sensitivity and harmony. This is going to make this very palpable to us today. So we don't want to get caught in one side or the other. We want to find that balance point, which again, like I said, goes back to the sextile with the moon and Rahu that happened hours previously. So from there, okay. What else do we got going on here? Then the moon is in then the moon comes into conjunction with Chiron. So this is really going to be the kind of the pinnacle of all of this, because then we come into a very direct, very emotional, very like I said, direct connection with this wounding of self, right? Where we acknowledge and we know what we're capable of. We see the potential of where we could be and what we can grow into, but we are frustrated that it's not happening right away, because that's not how it happens. The seed doesn't immediately turn into the next seed. It has to go through an entire process in order to get to that point. But we can be frustrated because we feel the potential within us, the desire within us. And so when the moon crosses Chiron, not only are we going to feel this frustration very directly, it's also, again, going to be triggering that wounding of self, the shame, the guilt, the victim narrative. I have to do something about this. I am going to be the savior, or I am a victim. So this is going to be right on the surface. And this opposition with Venus and Chiron is going to highlight this very strongly late tonight into early tomorrow. So take notice of how you feel as the day progresses, and your frustration, your connection to feeling like a victim, feeling like you need to save people, the wounded healer that Chiron represents, that ultimately he had to give up that identity in order to actually heal, which a lot of people very much struggle with. Ooh, Carolyn Miss, if you are not familiar with her, she talks a lot about this, and she has for a long time, and she pulls no punches on this shit. You know, she calls people out for, embracing their own wound identity in order to give themselves a sense of, sense of self, basically, and not actually healing anything. So I think this is going to be highlighted very strongly. So, and then from there, the moon comes into a quincunx with Mars in Virgo as well, right? That 150 degree angle that represents and you can kind of see, well, never mind. It represents that 150 degree angle that is, that doesn't fit, right? It's the wild card. It's squaring the circle, right? What can we do to actually initiate divine intervention? How can we adjust ourselves so that these things do, we get something out of it, because otherwise they don't fit together. And so this particular connection here is, on the one hand, we are feeling like this hammock that is just swinging between two trees, right? There is a respite on one hand because you're in the hammock, but there's also action because there's a rhythmic motion here of the hammock back and forth, but it's a very natural rhythm. And the quincunx here is that Mars in particular in Virgo is having us contact and giving us the courage, really, and the ambition and kind of the thrusting forward to go into the deeper recesses of the unconscious psyche, right? And to pick out and really feel into what is going on down there. And while we feel like we're just kind of like in this, rocking motion, this hammock between two trees is just like, I'm not really doing anything. And I'm not saying that that's the right way or that Mars is the right way. It's the fact that they don't seem to fit together, especially with Mars involved, because Mars is the ruler of Aries. So it's going to really kind of fit in with where the moon is, but at the same time we have to find a way to alchemize this situation, to square the circle, to find our higher self through adjusting ourselves in this moment. And I would say that both of these things can coexist if we find the space that they can coexist, because Mars is going to take us into the deeper recesses of the collective and our own unconscious with some thrust, right? It's just like, I am the warrior going into this zone, and we're going to also feel like, well, I don't really want to do that. I want to sit on this hammock and just like gather my energy by oscillating. And we can do both of these things. And in fact, it is going to be the space in between them that we find our alchemy, right? And at the very same time, the moon is going to be in opposition to asteroid Vesta over here in Libra. And again, we're going to want to be, oscillating back and forth while we're at rest. Our psyche is at rest in the hammock, so to speak. It is the oscillation between the polarity that is represented by the swinging of the hammock. But Vesta, man, she is getting into some interesting territory in Libra. And this is where we have to face the consequences of us. We will eventually have to assume the social risk in order to express our convictions, right? And inevitably face the consequences of that. And Vesta is the fire, right? The hearth flame. She is the spark of our soul, and she is a patron goddess, represents that. And so we are, in fact, we do have this support within us. We have this flame within us that will give us the ability to assume the social risk. And, there's things that we can apply this to directly right now in order to express our convictions, but we will still have to face the consequences of that, because that will inevitably shift the scales. And the moon, again, in Aries is like, I just want to feel into this, right? And there's that fulcrum again. We're going to have to find a way to not only embrace what is a breakdown in a constructive relationship between individual and society. It is here, right? And it is stimulating and supporting us, this constructive breakdown. But at the same time, we each individually are going to feel the tension and the pull on that, because we're going to want to simultaneously exist in two places at once. And so we're going to have to find the balance point even in between that, because we can't, it's coming closer and closer to a time where people are going to have to assume the risks in order to express our convictions and face the consequences. It doesn't mean that we can't individually and within ourselves find our swing, right, of the hammock. But what I'm saying is that, what I'm saying is that we have to find that place in between, so that we're not completely outside of that, but at the same time, we're not like completely so pulled into that situation that we forget our center. And again, it goes all the way back to the moon in early Aries, making the connection to her own nodal axis, which is really giving us the opportunity to exist in two places at once in order to really fundamentally trust, but also cooperate actively with what is being provided naturally to us. So, wow, that's crazy. You know, I don't know how these transmissions are really going to go when I come here. You know, I have a basic idea, but usually what happens is that some incredible things come through. So I'm going to leave it at that, my friends. Thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. If you're interested in reading energetic support, you can go to my website. Don't forget the flash sale, $44 for a lunar transit reading. So we'll look at the rest of this lunar cycle. We'll look at the whole lunar cycle, see how the new moon up to this full moon, even look at the next new moon and how that may unfold for you. And you can book that right through my website. And when you send the message, just say that you are booking the flash sale or whatever. So anybody that books the lunar transit reading between now and September 6th is going to get it at a discount. So I will be putting that up on my platforms. So take care of yourselves, please. And I will see you tomorrow for the daily. I love you guys. Have a great day. Bye.